What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Brun Bafflestone. Today we're having another episode of my Metagaming series, this time talking about build construction. I've been putting together a lot of builds lately for this fighter series, and so I'm a philosopher and I've been starting to think about it in that philosophical way. And then I got a comment from Mobius on my channel on a recent video that made me kind of crystallize these thoughts a little bit. So thanks for that. And I wanted to create a video that talked about these things in a little bit of a structured way. Because I'm realizing that when I put my builds together for this channel, there are like some overarching philosophies that I take into consideration that I don't think that some of my critics are taking into consideration. Not that there's that many. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that my content isn't well received, but I do always take any criticism validly and cogently and evaluate them for whatever content they might have. And so I wanted to address these things in a more formal way. So I've just jotted down a few ways that I think about it, and there are four here. So one thing that I think about in building characters is obviously their personal performance, right? What kind of DPR are they pumping out? What kind of defenses do they have? How good are they at what they are built to do? And that, that's very important, of course. But that is, I think, the most obvious way to build a character, to optimize a character, meaning that's what your average player kind of seizes on. And as such, I think it's kind of a shallow beginner's way of optimizing. It gets a little bit deeper than that. And so another thing that I think needs to be considered in all of my builds is the party synergies. Right? Not just the personal synergies about how I can increase my DPR or increase my mobility or increase my defense, but how does this impact the party? I always think about those sorts of things. In my last video, I mentioned how my build constructs a mind sharpener and then gives it to the party wizard. Because in my mind, party wizard concentration spells are the most valuable and powerful effects in the game. So even if I don't personally benefit by using one of my infusions, I benefit from the greater party synergies. When my wizard's spells don't go down, that's just way, way better for our collaborative strategies and for me personally. I mean, to me, that seems obvious, but it's not necessarily something that everyone takes into consideration. But yet, as another example, in my all-cleric party, we recently added a paladin who was built around high armor class and was kind of intended to be the party tank, where he's going to be taking a lot of hits. So I immediately handed him my ring of protection because, high armor class is like my third layer of defense and, I'm hardly ever touched anyway. So it just was immediately apparent to me that the party as a whole, and therefore me, would be way better off if he had the ring of protection and not me. So that was an easy thing to do. Another thing that I like to think about in terms of building characters is the playability. Because when you're building characters levels 1 through 20, it's easy to get kind of tunnel vision on that final product of what it's going to be when it's fully complete. We have to remember that these are characters that you actually have to play like for a long time to probably never even get to that level, right? I'm 10th level and my campaign is almost a year and a half at this point. Probably will never see 20th level. Statistically, 95% of games are 10th level or under. I understand that there's a problem with the stats, but as a general rule, I think that it's pretty common, at least for me. Most people aren't playing too many tier 3 or tier 4 games. So, especially when it comes to fighters, because they have this extra attack progression that they get a second attack at 5th level and a third attack at 11th level. And so there are some questions as to when you want to insert multi-classing levels that's going to delay that progression. And generally speaking, I've found that I'm comfortable with a 1-level dip before level 5 and putting off that 5th level extra attack by 1 level, because generally, multi-classing adds some really good stuff that to me makes up for that extra attack, even though your DPR goes down. But 11th level is a little bit more problematic for me. I don't like waiting for 11th level because of the playability. Most of the action occurs in Tier 2. So I don't want to be spending most of those levels building to something. I want like my full kit in place by Tier 2. For example, in my last video, which was the Echo Knight build, the whole kit was in place by level 8. Right, and literally like level 9 and thereafter was nothing but, and no new tactical changes, right? So that's what I like in a build, something that's playable from level 1 through level 11. And I'm willing to make sacrifices in my, Tier 3 and Tier 4 development for better playability in Tier 1 and 2. If you're looking only at the final level 20 construction, it can seem suboptimal, but I think in terms of playability, it is most optimal. The final thing that I want to keep in mind whenever I'm making a build is action economy. I mean, you only get so many actions, and you only have about 5 rounds in your typical battle. So you're going to get 5 actions, 5 bonus actions, 5 reactions. What do you do with those? I am not necessarily comfortable just assembling a collection of really cool abilities. I've got to look, like, well, is that an action? Is that going to interfere with my preferred action on round 1, which as a fighter is generally going to be the attack action? If so, that's an immediate 20% drop in my damage output over the course of that battle. It needs to be worth it, or ideally avoided entirely. All right, if you have a build that is got a strong bonus action like the Echo Knight does, you've got to consider Clog. When I was looking over all of the multi-class possibilities, these 2 things just kept coming up for me over and over and over. Wow, that seems great in a vacuum, but it takes an action that would reduce my damage output by 80%. I'm not attacking on round 1. I don't like the synergy there. Or, oh, this is a great ability, but it's a bonus action. Can I fit it in with all of the manifests and the teleports that I'm going to be executing as an Echo Knight? Seems tight. No, I don't see the synergies. Not worth it. On to the next. And so that's why I settled for Alchemist, because the free action of being able to leverage the summon action, it was just so elegant. It was great in terms of action economy. It gained me significant bonuses on round 1 without interfering with any of my output over the expected 5 rounds of combat. So just another kind of nuanced way, I think, that I look at building characters that isn't necessarily always taken into account when assessing them. But overall, I think that these 4 things are very important. It's not just about your personal performance and personal DPR output and personal defenses, right? It's not about, it's also about party synergies, it's also about playability, and it's also about action economy. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'd be very curious to hear what people have to say. This sounds like an interesting discussion to me. What sort of things do you take into consideration when you build your characters? And regardless, thank you so much for watching. This has been the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Bafflestone. See you next time.